because it completely shatters the idea of what a sequel can be. Day of the Dead from 1985 by George Romero is a difficult movie. Its thematic material is very serious and dark. It's really a meditation on failure and ineffectiveness. We are presented throughout the film with this core group of survivors at this underground research facility who are, after spending... It's never made exactly clear in the film how long they've been underground. I think at the point the film takes place, it feels like maybe a year. There are three groups of characters in the film who are all fighting for their own things. You have the soldiers, you have the scientists, and then you have the technical guys. You have the pilot and the radio man, who are really the outsiders in the film. They choose not to be involved with the politicking and the fighting among the two main groups. But the soldiers are falling apart, and Captain Rhodes is not a great choice to lead the men. And then the scientists seem split as well between Sarah and Frankenstein. And what's most striking in terms of drama is that the whole thing is an exercise in futility. It's really more about trying to keep the world the way it was than to live in the reality that it is. Dr. Logan's experiment with Bub, as fascinating as it is in the film, would still be walking humanity down a dark path of domesticating zombies by feeding them other human beings, which would be compounding the worst aspects of humanity. And then you have Sarah, who wants to cure the zombie virus, but for the purposes of the film is completely ineffective at it. It's an existential drama about what parts of society we want to hold on to, but starting from the point that civics is already breaking down. Can you imagine pitching this movie to a studio in the current system and getting them to make it? The answer is no, it would never happen. It would have to be a completely different kind of movie. Maybe the most effective thing that Day of the Dead does, it's a great example of a film telling a really dark story in a light-hearted way. The soundtrack contributes strongly to the film having a lighter tone. And from what I understand, the film got some criticism about the soundtrack when it was released. Except the thing about the soundtrack to Day of the Dead is, I believe it suits the film very well, because if you had told this film with a really dark soundtrack, you wouldn't be able to sit through it. There's also an issue with Sarah being the protagonist, because since her search for a cure isn't really focused on that much in the film, except for scenes where we see that she's working, it's almost like the film wants us to focus more on her personal qualities of hopefulness, that somehow she can manage to hold this group together or get people to behave sensibly with one another, which is, clearly not going to happen from the beginning of the film. So the entire film is a downward spiral of things getting worse, and the only thing that makes it bearable is the hopeful note of the Sarah character. I think Bub might be the main protagonist in this film, because he goes through something and gets something by the end. Bub doesn't just escape, he frees himself, and he experiences grief over the death of Logan, some measure of revenge against Rhodes. He listens to music, he fires a gun, he learns to do these things. In a way, comes back to life somewhat. His is the most fulfilling arc in the film. If you look at this movie as a metaphor, the fact that they are underground in a bunker is very significant, because it's an obvious symbolic position. Humanity is now underground. Humanity is now buried. The zombies rule the surface. And just the sheer balls of George Romero to take a zombie film to that place. It's just such a creative departure from Dawn of the Dead. The same as Dawn of the Dead, it was a creative departure from Night of the Living Dead. All of Romero's films from that era, they're just full of great ideas. at times seem to be busting with ideas. And if you take some time to look into the production history of the film, or watch some of the excellent documentaries that have been made on it, Romero indicates that the film was almost a deconstruction of itself. That's just a hell of a place to write from, to not be afraid to go there with a story. Romero was in a way trying to create a new mythology. It's something that you had to wrestle with as much as he had to wrestle with it. By the end of the film, the message is really what's worth saving? Ourselves and our friends, and not to barricade ourselves in the dark and try to figure out humanity's problems. There's something to be said for that reading too. Yeah, Day of the Dead. Deep, difficult, underrated, full of layers, instantly rewatchable. Before I go, I wanted to mention that some of you might have noticed that I put a Patreon button up here. I have no specific donation plan set yet, other than I'm trying to generate about $200 a month. That's my goal for now. I want to let you guys know how much I appreciate your views. And if you want to contact me or ask about the show, by all means do it through Patreon. And I'll put a more formal announcement for that up soon. So, be excellent. Thanks for stopping into the new show, and I'll see you next time.